Hello, my name is Reza Novitasari and my partner Vina Silviasari, and we would like to present Chapter 11 about pay structure decisions. In this chapter, we're going to discuss about pay structure, equity theory and fairness, developing pay levels, developing job structure, developing pay structure, conflicts, monitoring compensation costs, globalization, geographic region, and pay structure, the importance of process, current challenges, and last but not least, government regulation of employee compensation. Also, the main topics that we need to give attention at are how to developing pay levels, developing job structure, and developing pay structure.
Pay has a large impact on employee attitudes and behaviors. It is also often considered a sign of status and success. Therefore, pay decisions must be carefully managed and communicated. For the first discussion, we are going to talk about equity theory and fairness. Equity theory suggests that people evaluate the fairness of their situations by comparing them with those of other people. There are two types of employee social comparisons. The first is external equity. The second is internal equity. There are three main topics of this part. The first is developing pay levels, the second is developing a job structure, and the third one is developing a pay structure. In developing pay levels, we have to consider about market pressures. In market pressures, there are product market competition. Firstly, organizations must compete effectively in the product market. In other words, they must be able to sell their goods and services at a quantity and price that will bring a sufficient return on their investment. Employees as a resources. Because organizations have to compete in the labor market, they should consider their employees not just as a cost, but as a resources in which the organization has invested, and from which it expects valuable returns. In deciding what to pay, we have to consider about efficiency wage theory. Efficiency wage theory is a theory stating that wages influence worker productivity. There is also market pay surveys that affected the market pressures. To compete for talent, organizations use benchmarking, a procedure in which an organization compares its own practices against those of the competition. Jump into the next topic about developing a job structure. Talking about developing a job structure, there are two main discussions. The first one is job evaluations, and the second one is the point factor system. Job evaluations is an administrative procedure used to measure internal job worth. The third discussion of this part is developing a pay structure. Developing pay structure has three main topics. The first one is market survey data, the second one is pay policy line, and the third one is pay grades. For market survey data, there is natural logarithm of pay which is equal to $6.98 plus 0.006 multiplied by job evaluations points. A second pay setting approach that combines information from external and internal comparison is to use the pay policy line to derive pay rates for both key and non-key jobs.
Are you raising wages, and might you need to raise wages more if indeed there is more of a clampdown on immigration?
Well, I think the biggest opportunity we right now have in the U.S. from an economic standpoint is workforce participation rate. So while the unemployment level is relatively low right now in the U.S., below 5%, you've still got a couple of percent of people fewer participating in the workforce than you did, 6, 8, 10 years ago. So, that means probably, 4, 5, 6 million people who are on the sidelines that are not in the workforce. And from a wage perspective, We have been seeing some pressure on wages, and I think that's a good thing. Ultimately, if the economy is strong enough that it is
Sure.
Causing you to ultimately need to raise wages to staff our stores, to give great service, it's a good thing.
Have you?
No, we
had
have.
to?
Absolutely. We've taken some increases, and that's a good thing. I mean, that actually means things are working when you've got a full enough employment level. So I think the important thing is, are we going to put policies in place that are going to get the workforce participation rate up? Are we going to give opportunities to people that haven't been working over a long period of time and have dropped out of the workforce?
Developing pay levels also includes conflicts between market pay surveys and job evaluations. The choice is emphasizing the internal comparisons or emphasizing external comparisons. Both two potential problems arise. There is no one right solution for both choices. Each organization must decide which objectives are most essential and choose the appropriate strategy. The last topic of this part is globalization's geographic region and pay structures. Market pay structures can differ substantially across countries, both in terms of their level and in terms of the relative worth of jobs. This geographic location is an important factor for human resources to consider when establishing a pay structure.
The importance of process, participation, and communication. Any given pay decision is rarely obvious to diverse groups that make up organizations, regardless of the decision's technical merit or basis in theory. Of course, it is important when changing pay practices to decide which program or combinations of programs makes most sense, but how such decisions are made and how they are communicated also matter. Participation. Employee participation in compensation decision-making can take many forms. For example, employees may serve on task forces charged with recommending and designing a pay program. They may also be asked to help communicate and explain its rationale. To date, for what are perhaps obvious reasons, employee participation in pay-level decisions remains fairly rare. Communication is likely to have other important effects. We know, for example, as emphasized by equity theory, that not only actual pay but the comparison standard influences employee attitudes. Managers play the most crucial communication role because of their day-to-day interactions with their employees. Therefore, they must be prepared to explain why the pay structure is designed as it is and to judge whether employee concerns about the structure need to be addressed with changes to the structure.
The burden of doing business so that, the people who are getting paid the lowest aren't the only ones bearing the cost.
Current challenges. Problems with job-based pay structures. The approach taken in this chapter, that of defining pay structures in terms of jobs and their associated responsibilities, remains the most widely used in practice. However, job-based pay structures have a number of potential limitations. First, they may encourage bureaucracy. Second, the structure hierarchical nature reinforces a top-down decision-making and information flow as well as status differentials. Third, the bureaucracy required to generate and update job descriptions and job evaluations can become a barrier to change. Responses to problems with job-based pay structures. Delayering and bending. In response to the problems caused by job-based pay structures, some organizations have implemented delayering, or reducing the number of job levels to achieve more flexibility in job assignments and in assigning merit increases. One possible disadvantage of delayering and bending is a reduced opportunity for promotion. Therefore, organizations need to consider what they will offer employees instead. Paying the person. Pay for skill, knowledge, and competency. Competency-based pay is similar but usually refers to a plan that covers some employees, such as managers. The basic idea is that if you want employees To learn more skills and become more flexible in the jobs they perform, you should pay them to do it. We often hear that US labor costs are simply too high to allow US companies to compete effectively with companies in other countries. Based solely on a cost approach, it would perhaps make sense to try to shift many types of productions from a country like Germany to other countries, particularly the newly industrialized countries. Will this be a good idea? Not necessarily. There are several factors to consider. Note that relative labor costs are very unstable over time. Second, skill levels.
Do you worry that new technologies could cause mass unemployment?
The quality and productivity of national labor forces can vary dramatically. This is an especially important consideration in comparisons between labor costs in industrialized countries like the United States and developing countries like Mexico. Third, productivity. Productivity essentially meaning labor cost per hour divided by productivity per hour worked. One indicator of productivity is gross domestic product per person. Fourth, non-labor considerations. Any consideration of where to locate production cannot be based on labor considerations alone. In fact, an increasing number of organizations have decided that it is more important to focus on non-labor factors in deciding where to locate production. The issue of executive pay has been given widespread attention in the press.
Steep.
In a sense,
A
the
lot of
topic
that has been
achieved more
growth
coverage
at the
than
top.
it deserves
Prizes maybe
because there
17,
are very
18%
few
of
top
jobs.
executives
It's about a
and
third
their
larger than it
compensations
was
often
in
accounts for a
1980.
small share of an
And if you
organization's
look
total
just
labor
among people
cost.
without a college degree,
And it
On
was
the
a
other
stable
hand,
workforce.
top
People had
executives
full-time
have a
hours, and
disproportionate
health
ability
insurance, and
to
even
influence
commission.
organization
And it was a
performance.
workforce that knew each
So,
other and
decisions
felt
about their
like they could make their
compensations are
job
critical.
better. By 2000,
Also, in pay structure
Thank you,
decisions,
for joining
governments
us,
take part in
today
making
to discuss the
regulation of
importance
employee
of-
compensation. The first regulation is Equal Employment Opportunity. Equal Employment Opportunity, or EEO regulation, prohibits sex and race-based differences in employment outcomes such as pay, unless justified by business necessity. The second regulation is minimum wage, overtime, and prevailing wage laws. The 1938 Fair Labor Standards Act, or FLSA, establishes a minimum wage for jobs, which now stands at $7.25
sick
per
leave
hour.
in certain cities and states.
The FLSA
It's a response to the
also
fact that not
requires
only
that
are middle-class
employees be
jobs
paid
80
at a
hours of
rate
overtime
of
per
1.5
month. Those
times
extra hours
their
are
hourly
often
rate for
unpaid.
each hour
Today,
of
Japan's
overtime
corporate
work
culture
beyond
is
40
driven by the
hours in a week.
so-called salary man.
The conclusion of this discussion is pay structure is a strategy in management on how to give employee an appropriate wages but not costing too much budget, so the company can achieve effectiveness in production and empower society.